How long's he out? When are we going to see
My
Draymond again?
guess would be into like early January. There's 9 more games for the Warriors in December. Some of the buzz you were hearing yesterday was like, 8, 10, 12 type games. They obviously went with the indefinitely. I think part of that is what you said, Sam. It's kind of like a safe, we'll get to it later type scenario. But also, I just think they want to see some level of remorse from Draymond, which I just don't feel like they've felt in past experiences. So I assume, Sam, you may even know better than me on this, but I assume there'll be several like Adam Silver, Draymond Green conversations over the next couple of weeks. There'll be some type of stipulations, but again, I don't think it's going to be some crazy like, you need to bring a 50-day anger management chip to my door or something like that. I just think it's probably going to end up being like I said, right around 8 to 12 and into January will be my guess, speculation. And as long as he shows some level of like, I'll really try not to do it again, then I think you'll see him again. Like this isn't going to go February, March, April. I don't think.
Right. Jovan, before I throw it your way, just to quickly explain my safe comment. I think what I mean by safe is that you have a certain section of the public that hears indefinite and actually thinks there's a chance that he might be out for the year. And then the perception becomes, man, the NBA really came down hard on him. If I had to handicap this thing, I think, when he comes back in somewhere from the 8 to 12 game range, you're then going to have that same section of the public say, "Wait, what the hell? I thought he was gone for months." Like they were soft on him. They're still going to take criticism ultimately for the choice that was made. This indefinite route, it kind of postpones that criticism. But I do not expect it to be a Ron Artest, 73 game suspension type situation. You had your hands full with all things Lakers, but this story, Jovan, was something that was on everybody's desk. What are your thoughts on the latest Draymond saga?
Yeah, well, one of my first thoughts, and I know we're in some uncharted territory here, is if you're the Players Association, I feel like you kind of have to fight this pretty hard. And I don't know if they're going to or not, but I think it's a slippery slope with an indefinite suspension. And I know there is some precedent for that, but I just think, if you're the player, like from the player side, I see why they would want to fight that. But yeah,
well, and you got to quickly. Sorry to interject. You got to quickly contextualize, Jovan.
Yes,
Players
there is
Association with executive director. Here's guys, real quick.
History there.
We got Andre Iguodala as the interim executive director of the Players Union, one of Draymond's closest friends. You got Sean Livingston is now, I think roughly the title is director of player engagement, former Warrior, former, kind of old head for Draymond.
Which a little bit more context for you, Sam.
Warriors front office.
He was at the Warrior Suns game on Tuesday.
Was he? Interesting. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So you have that. Then you go to the league level, and we know this one. You got Joe Dumars, who Draymond has called a father figure as the head of discipline, to put it in rough terms, of the NBA. Adam Silver is going to need to lead the way on the league side on this one. But, yeah, you're talking about personal dynamics all over the place.
Yeah, and to be clear, I get why the league suspended him indefinitely, and I agree with you that I think that was the safe call, and it kind of gives them some leeway here over the next few weeks to figure this situation out. I just think from the Players Association side,
no, I agree.
If they can kind of give an indefinite suspension like that, I think there's some motivation to kind of push back against that, especially given Draymond's relationships with some of the principal figures. But we spoke with Darvin Ham, who's a Saginaw Michigan guy and has some history with Draymond, and he was saying he was going to check in on Draymond, and that in a lot of these situations, we kind of look at the player or the antics or whatever's happening on the floor, but there is a human element to this, and that clearly he's going through something, whether it's basketball related, whether it's in his personal life. So Darvin's like, I'm going to check in on him and just see how he's doing as a person. Like, forget Draymond the Warrior, Draymond the basketball player. Like, how's Draymond the human being? So I thought that was an interesting kind of way to approach the discussion, because a lot of it is going to be on Draymond's history and how this affects the Warriors and their future and whatnot, and all that stuff is very important. But clearly, with he's always towed the line and often crossed it, but not to this extent and this frequently as he has seemingly in 2023. So it seems like he's going through something. again, be it the Warrior struggles or something in his personal life. So I thought Darvin kind of talking about Draymond the human,
Sure.
what was an interesting wrinkle to all this.
All right, Slater, before you take that, that's a really good point that Jovan makes, and I want you to unpack it. And it's a little sensitive. I'm going to walk the line myself. There's part of me that if I'm being cynical, I've told this to other people this morning, like the whole angle of there's something going on with Draymond, and whether the league tries to have him speak to a therapist or figure out what's going on. I'm not sure how I feel about the angle, because there's part of me, again, knowing Draymond fairly well, that thinks he might just be looking him dead in the eye and saying, y'all, this is how I compete. This is it. Like Rudy Gobert, he doesn't have regrets over what happened there because he can't stand Rudy, and Rudy put his hands on Clay. I think in Draymond's mind, that's the proper way to handle that. I think on the Nurkic thing, I know some people have accused him of lying. I don't know. I think he can be out of control. I think if he meant to do it, he probably would have said it. And I don't like Slater. My point being, you're so close to it. Do you feel that subplot or that narrative beneath the surface with the Warriors people about how, yeah, Draymond's going through this and that, and that might explain his behavior? Or is it just like, no, everybody?
No, I mean,
Draymond.
he's been kind of his normal self. He's typically very informative and good to deal with. Chatty, and I kind of agree with what you're saying. Like the other night, I did feel a genuine feeling from him. He was even asked about, hey, you're supposed to keep yourself out of these situations. Like, how do you. And he's like, typically I'd agree, but tonight I was just trying to like sell a call and like accidentally hit the guy. This was
Right.
He even said, I've been stopped trying to argue with refs. I've stopped trying to get into it with players. Like I've been trying. Like I was flopping basically. Well, he tried to say it wasn't a flop, it was a flail. I mean, a sell, I think he called it. But regardless of how you want to term it, he was like, look, I just like didn't even really mean to do that. And I felt that that was genuine. I know the world didn't. I know he has certainly not earned, the right for the world to believe him in some of these situations. But to your point, yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is a hard subject to necessarily dig into because we're starting to talk personal life or this or that. But like, no, I don't really feel like something deep is necessarily going on.
Well, and there was some of that when the Jordan Poole punch happened, right? There was a sense that, like any of us, is regular life stuff. Like, it might have been in a bad place that day for non-basketball reasons. I haven't heard that this time around. Like you said, he's been great to deal with this year. I think part of it is, I would go back to, his 2-year run of leg kicks, that would go above the belt and that people begged him to stop doing, and he just wouldn't. He is histrionics, kind of embodied, defined. That's how he plays the game. You go back to that Sacramento game, Slater, that we were at, where, and I wrote about this in my column, the whole thing where it led to a little bit of a conflict on the bench where Draymond was frustrated. But if you go back to the beginning of it, what did it start with? Trey Lyles hits him with a pretty soft elbow. He did get him. And then Draymond just sells that call. Like, it's just histrionics. That's how the whole thing started. He flopped and he was mad at the refs, and then he's in their ear, and then it snowballs and he's out of control. I do want to spin it forward because we got to get to some of this other stuff.
One of the things, I mean, and this could be part of spinning it forward because I do think it matters, especially as the Warriors try to figure out what to do. With Draymond Green. I would say if I was them right now looking at the problem, it's like, part of the attempt this season is they want to go on a deep playoff run. We could talk about if that's even realistic with what's on the roster and how they're performing right now, but obviously that is the objective. There's just no possible way in a deep playoff run that Draymond isn't going to get mixed up in some stuff and get a flagrant foul and some technicals or this or that. And the problem for them is, say what you want about the Nurkic thing the other night. If that was just Trey Lyles, name your random NBA player, like maybe they get one game. They get ejected from the game. They get one game. People are like, well, that was weird. I mean, Draymond's getting indefinite suspensions. And like, my point is, a normal flagrant foul that you'd expect Draymond Green to pick up over the course of one or two playoff series now, like, might be like, you're gone for the playoffs. And that's a problem. Like, that to me, just what the league is, like the crackdown that the league currently has on him right now. And you could,
it's tough.
Yeah. Like, what are you doing? Like,
it feels like he's one
can't
step
be
from
himself then.
Maybe 2 steps from being out of the league. I mean, that's honestly how it feels. And Then and I wanted to mention this too, then you consider the way that his colleagues, his associates are choosing to frame this. So Nurkic sits up there and says, I don't know what's going on with that guy. I hope he gets the help he needs. I was just happy he didn't choke me. Man, that gives the league, more kind of evidence that, oh, this is a problem in the eyes of his peers. Kevin Durant, my goodness, Slater, I assume you saw Kevin's perspective on the matter. I mean, that's a guy who has sat down with him in recent years and done long, open podcasts and interviews, and they seem to have fixed their relationship. It was a little surreal for me to see Kevin, back into an outsider's mindset. Now he's obviously going to defend his teammate, Nurkic as well, but his tone is the type of tone coming from a superstar that if you're the league office, again, it pushes you even farther down that path of we need to attempt to quote unquote fix Draymond. I don't think they're going to find it. They're going to find Draymond. That's who he is. Rasheed Wallace had a really interesting interview, and I apologize for not crediting the pod that it was on, but Rasheed talking about Draymond when he was a young fella being around the Pistons, and had you might know this later. I'm forgetting the relationship he had where he was friends with somebody in the front office. His family was.
You may have heard of him. His name is
Joe
Joe
Dumars. It was Joe.
Dumars.
Yeah. I don't know how to connect
this
those
is where,
dots.
where it all intermixes here, right?
Well, and as someone made the great point yesterday too, I mean, the idea of a bad boy Piston being the ultimate legislator in the NBA today is something to kind of wrap your head around. But yeah, Rasheed's point was that Draymond is one of my young fellas that he heard, us behind the scenes during those Pistons years. He heard the language, he heard the mentality. This is where it came from. So that's where I'm going back. Unless the NBA has just decided they don't want tough guys, bad guys who do cross the line, like that's who he is. And I don't think that's going to change.
Yeah, agreed. Should we shift to like the Warriors?
Spinning it forward, are they going to do a thing? I mean, I wrote about it. Tim Kawakami wrote about it. I think maybe even multiple times. It feels like an inflection point. Again, bottom line, are the Warriors going to make any major changes in the next 2 months or 6 months? Because to me, as I wrote, and I'm sure that they don't like hearing this, it's just how I feel. They look cooked. They look, if championships are the goal, they do not look like a team that is going to be a title contender. And they also, I mean, I had a line I tried to kind of have in there about it's tough to keep trudging forward when the coals underneath your feet are this hot. Point being, if they had a calmer environment, Slater, I'm throwing it back at you. If they had a calmer environment, Draymond at 33, Clay at 34, Steph at 35, could win a lot of basketball games, have a lot of fun, always take pride in the 4 championships, and continue to play together and maybe, just maybe, right off into the retirement sunset together. I don't see that happening now because it's so messy. It is incredibly messy. It's, it's every couple of weeks there's something like this. And I think it's born out of the fact that they are, yes, they're old, but they're young enough that they still see themselves as title contenders. And when reality doesn't meet their own perception, I think it's wildly uncomfortable. And that's why I just don't see how they're going to do this for the next 4, 5, 6 years, maybe 4 years, but, and have it be fulfilling. It does not seem like that is going to be possible.
Yeah, I mean, and this is certainly a fair time to have that opinion. Now, I do think the next 6 weeks, 2 months is like vital in the question because of the tax bill Joe Lacob's paying right now, which is historic, and it's currently for an 11 seed. They're 10-13. They're pretty firmly in 11th right now. They're not going to have Draymond for however long, and they're going to have to win. They're going to have to win to prove that, like, at the deadline, stuff doesn't need to get like kind of rattled, or, into the off season, a lot of times you can't completely just, shake everything up at the deadline, but like they're only going to pay for this type of team and commit to this type of like win now approach if you actually win. And they're just not winning. And like, that a lot of what is going on and the spiral that it feels like the Warriors are in right now is just a fact that like they just keep giving away games they should win. Blowing 24-point leads in Sacramento, blowing a 22-point lead in LA, blowing like end of the game, awful decision making by their veterans. By the way, their young core right now is playing awesome and is about to get a chance to play more, which I think is an intriguing part of this next month. Kuminga's probably going to start now. Pajemski's playing really well. But it's Draymond fouling Chet Holmgren when he shouldn't late in the Oklahoma City game. It's the turnovers that Steph and Draymond had in Sacramento. It's Klay Thompson's deep slump and just kind of like grumbling nature about it that just seems to make it worse and worse on a daily basis. It's Andrew Wiggins having the worst year of his career at the age of 28. It's Kevon Looney not looking really like himself. That's 4 of their 5 starters are just like really struggling, and it's all veterans. It's 4 of the 5 guys that won them the NBA title 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, as Steve Kerr likes to say, and why he's had a belief in them that they're this season haven't been fulfilling. So to your point, I do think there's a way out of this for the Warriors in the sense of like, if they just win, they can keep like things will feel good around them, and Joe Lacob will feel okay paying that bill, and they'll feel fine about trading a first-round pick, adding an asset to try to help this core. But if they're not winning, and particularly if Draymond Green's not even around to help them win because of this disciplinary stuff, why would it wouldn't make logical sense to keep it together. So like that the next month is just about make your record needs to go from 10-13 to 18-18 or something that feels more sustainable
with Draymond out. So good luck with that.